religious persecution in China is a topic very familiar for two guests joining us now from their work both defending religious liberty and reporting on the subject. Joining me today are Nina Shea, a human rights lawyer for more than 30 years. She's a senior fellow and director of the Center for Religious Freedom at the Hudson Institute, and Bill McGurn, former presidential speechwriter and now longtime columnist for the Wall Street Journal. Thank you both for joining us today. Bill, you've reported on China for about 30 years. What changes have you seen over the decades?
I have not as much concentrated on religious freedom the way Nina has. I mean, just has done incredible work. What's different now is there seems to be a resurgence under Xi Jinping. A lot of people see him as a guy who's concluded America is decadent and corrupt and that the 21st century belongs to China. And he wants to restore elements of Maoism. And remember, communism isn't about communal ownership of goods or anything like that. It's built on lies about human nature, and it's about one thing, power. And he's been pretty good at it. And I would say for Catholics, especially in China, it's only grown worse since the Vatican reached what I regard as a catastrophic deal with Beijing.
Well, we'll talk about that in a second, but we know that a good counter to power is prayer. Nina, tell us about the new campaign called Global Prayer for the Church and Peoples of China.
In March, Cardinal Charles Bo, who is the president of the Asian Federation of Catholic Bishops' Conferences, that's the bishops of Asia, issued a call for prayer for the church in China and the peoples of China for May, next week, May 23rd to 30th. And we, a group of lay activists, lay Christians, who've been following the deterioration, the repression there, decided we would facilitate this call for prayer, that we would help Cardinal Bo carry out his call. And we would do that by erecting a website, which is prayerforchina.org. And we would suggest prayers, we'd give background, and we are from international group. So this is a global initiative. We invite everyone, all your viewers, to join in. There's something you can do in your churches with intercessionary prayers or other ways of getting the word out. But spread the word and go to our website, prayerforchina.org.
We'll make sure to share that. Bill, let's talk about sanctions. The Chinese government sanctioned U.S. leaders like Gail Manchin and Tony Perkins for accusing the government of human rights violations against the Uyghur Muslim populations. How serious are these sanctions?
Well, we do have some serious sanctions imposed, both by the Trump administration and by the Biden administration. So I think there's a determination that we are going to use that. Unfortunately, though I favor the sanctions where we can identify individuals, I'm not sure they've changed any behavior from China yet. For example, in Hong Kong, we've sanctioned a lot of people that were involved in cracking down on the citizens for expressing their desire to live in democracy. So it's a good punishment, but it has not yet affected the change in behavior that we'd like to see. China is just calculating that we don't have the stomach for the long fight, that we're corrupt and weak, and that the future belongs to them. That's what Xi Jinping believes, and he's willing to see a few people sanctioned on the path to getting China to where he thinks it belongs.
Nina, you know the international community, is there weight to these sanctions for them?
Well, I think that there's consideration of the Olympics, whether that's an appropriate venue now to have a place where there's religious genocide against the Uyghur Muslims, where the church is being crushed and repressed in such a way it's being transformed into an arm of the Communist Party, whether that's appropriate. So I think that, just like we saw in the Soviet Union and the Eastern Bloc, we need to give moral support to the people who are struggling for their rights, for religious freedom, for other rights inside China. We've got to spread the word about what is happening to them. China wants to control the narrative. It wants to deny that this is even happening. And even for the Uyghurs, they're saying one of the atrocities that they're perpetrating against the Uyghurs is forced abortions and forced sterilization as a form of demographic control, as a form of eradication or annihilation over time. And they actually tweeted out from their embassy here that this was a liberation for the women of the Uyghur community there, and that they would no longer just be baby making machines. So it's atrocious.
That sounds atrocious, and we will continue to watch that as well. Bill, part of some of these horrifying stories is a personal one that we've heard about recently and reported on. Your godson, Jimmy Lai, a modern Thomas More, who was recently sentenced to 14 months in prison for leading pro-democracy protests. He's a real freedom fighter. Do you have an update on his story?
Yes, I do. Look, he's in jail. That's only one of the smallest charges against him. He faces a few other charges, and in particular, he faces a charge under the national security law, which is very serious, of sedition, and that carries a life sentence. Right now, he's in jail in Hong Kong. He's actually, I think, doing pretty well in jail. They put his body in jail, but it's clearly not his mind. Nina mentioned prayer for China. Jimmy's wife, Teresa, is a rock of the faith. She brought her husband into the faith. She doesn't waver in it. She won't run away from him during this difficult time. And the only thing that Teresa's ever asked her friends for her husband is to pray for him. So they really believe in it. And if you'd heard Jimmy, I've got some letters from him from prison. He's taking his time to. He believes that he's there to expiate his sins, and he's trying to make the best of it and purify himself. So it's just a terrible, terrible thing. What we're afraid of is if they move him from prison in Hong Kong to prison in China. He's 72, he has diabetes and so forth, but he's a very brave man. He's very firm in his faith. And, it points to a larger thing in Hong Kong. A lot of the leaders of the pro-freedom movement in Hong Kong are Catholics. A part of the protest hymns were Christian songs and so forth. The father of democracy, who was also convicted of a crime but not sentenced to jail, Martin Lee, he's a Catholic. There are a lot of people there that are like that, and they are drawing sustenance from their faith. They're really on trial now, and it's a hard thing. And I'll say it's especially a hard thing for these people in Hong Kong that they do not have the support of the Holy Father in Rome. It's just a soul-crushing fact.
Let's talk about that then, the church in China. Nina, you recently wrote about Xi Jinping's regime walking back its agreement with the Vatican effective the 1st of this month, removing Pope Francis from any participation in the appointment of Catholic Church leaders in China. Has the Vatican commented on the situation, or have there been any changes?
No, the Vatican has been expressed joy at this agreement, which is very hard to believe because it had to sacrifice a lot. It's one of its prices is silence on the atrocities and repression against the churches and other peoples in China. And if you go to globalprayerforchina.org, our website, Global Prayer for China, I think I forgot the global the first time, you will learn about this. There are videos, there are briefing papers. But basically, the church is unified. That's what they're happy about. The church is unified, according to the Vatican. But it's unified on Beijing's terms inside the Patriotic Church. And the priests and bishops to become members of the Patriotic Church, which is the only church that's now permitted and tolerated, you have to pledge independence from the Vatican and independence from papal authority. Cardinal Zen of Hong Kong has said this is a form of apostasy. This is an act of apostasy to sign that. So the Vatican has tried to go back and correct that by saying, well, you can put a caveat, say that you're not really going to do that part. A priest tried to do that. He was detained and tortured for 4 days. The Communist Party rejected that option.
Well, we're going to be watching that very closely, Nina. And Bill, thank you so much for joining us today.